Finally, Trump just turned to Putin and asked the one question we all wanted answered. Not me, though. The reason America elected Donald Trump is simple. He is a tough man willing to fight for America in the way the last few losers in office would never have. Today, he brought that fight to Putin himself. Donald Trump asked Putin to his face about the election hacking. The details of the meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin were spilled in a press conference by Rex Tillerson. Tillerson has been a vocal opponent of Russian election interference since day one. He revealed that Trump pushed hard on the issue of election interference, something Putin fiercely denied. Listen, Tillerson says Trump pressed Putin on election interference.
The president opened the meeting with President Putin by raising the concerns of the American people regarding Russian interference in the 2016 election. They had a very robust and lengthy exchange on the subject. The president pressed President Putin on more than one occasion regarding Russian involvement. President Putin denied such involvement, as I think he has in the past. The two leaders agreed, though, that this is a substantial hindrance in the ability of us to move the Russian-U.S. relationship forward, and agreed to exchange further work regarding commitments of non-interference in the affairs of the United States and our democratic process, as well as those of other countries. So more work to be done in that regard.
Mr. Secretary, Nick Waters from Bloomberg News. Can you tell us whether President Trump said whether there would be any consequences from Russia to the interference in the U.S. election? Did he spell out any specific consequences that Russia would face, and then also a serious ceasefire? When does it begin, and what makes you think that the ceasefire will succeed this time when past U.S.-Russia agreements on a ceasefire have failed?
With regard to the interference in the election, I think the president took note of actions that have been discussed by the Congress. Most recently, additional sanctions that have been voted out of the Senate to make it clear as to the seriousness of the issue. But I think what the two presidents, I think rightly, focused on is how do we move forward? How do we move forward from here? Because it's not clear to me that we will ever come to some agreed upon resolution of that question between the two nations. So the question is, what do we do now? And I think the relationship, and the president made this clear as well, is too important. And it's too important to not find a way to move forward. Not dismissing the issue in any way. And I don't want to leave you with that impression. And that is why we've agreed to continue engagement and discussion around how do we secure a commitment that the Russian government has no intention of and will not interfere in our affairs in the future, nor the affairs of others. And how do we create a framework in which we have some capability to judge what is happening in the cyber world and who to hold accountable. And this is obviously an issue that's broader than just U.S.-Russia, but it's certainly, we see the manifestation of that threat in the events of last year. And so I think, again, the president's rightly focused on how do we move forward from what may be simply an intractable disagreement at this point.
Instead of simply focusing on punishments following the denial, Trump is now working on getting Putin to give the U.S. an enforceable commitment to not interfere with our or our allies' elections from this point forward. The two men did agree, however, that the issue of election hacking has become a real hindrance to improving U.S.-Russia relations. They decided that it is more beneficial to work together going forward than descending into a second Cold War. Tillerson said the election interference was serious and will not be forgotten. However, we simply have to find a way to go forward. The meeting was only scheduled for 30 minutes but ran a whopping 2 hours and 15 minutes. At one point, they even sent First Lady Melania in to remind Trump and Putin that they ran over time. The two leaders were so caught up in negotiations, however, that she was quickly dismissed. So what was accomplished in the Trump-Putin meeting at the G20 summit? Well, here is a list. Russians in Syria were given a stand-down order to not attack U.S. pilots. Relations with the U.S. and Russia have warmed. Trump made it clear we will work with Russia after they stop taunting our military and we sort the Ukraine crisis out. Sorted, I would assume. It was a good start and a big government improvement over Obama's last meeting with Putin that landed us in this predicament. So true. Many awkward moments for Putin and Obama at the summits.
As fighting intensified in Ukraine, a recently divorced President Putin appeared to be on a charm offensive, starting at the APEC summit in Beijing, where cameras caught him putting a shawl on the wife of Chinese President Xi Jinping, which her aides promptly replaced. But it was the informal but uncomfortable encounters between the Russian and U.S. leaders in which they looked in each other's direction but not at each other that made the news. There were no smiles behind the scenes as the two leaders spent a total of about 15 minutes together. Ukraine topped the conversation.
Look at Putin's face
at the G20 in Brisbane.
when he's looking at
Obama did
Obama.
not waste the chance to further isolate Mr. Putin. There, the two leaders had more encounters.
I would characterize them as typical of our interactions, which are businesslike and blunt.
The Australians showed Mr. Putin the same hospitality they showed other leaders. They let him hold and pet their koalas, just as President Obama got to do. But no one here in Australia has forgotten that Russia is blamed for the downing of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 that killed 298 people, including 28 Australians. President Obama joined leaders of Japan and Australia, who voiced their opposition to Russia's actions in Ukraine and called for those who brought the Malaysia plane down to be brought to justice. Throughout the G20, there were smiles and handshakes, but little mincing of words. At a private meeting, Canada's Stephen Harper told Mr. Putin, "I guess I'll shake your hand, but I have only one thing to say to you. You need to get out of Ukraine." In his remarks Sunday, President Obama offered Mr. Putin a way back to better relations.
My communications to him was no different than what I've said publicly, as well as what I've said to him privately over the course of this crisis in Ukraine. And that is, Russia has the opportunity to take a different path.
While other leaders remained in Brisbane until after lunch Sunday, Mr. Putin was among the first to leave the gathering. Luis Ramirez, VOA News, Brisbane.
Yeah, what is he going to do with Obama? He didn't, I think in one time I saw Putin didn't even shake Obama's hand, you know? Total disgrace, that's what he is. With Trump, at least, there's a meeting of the minds there. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And again, thank you so much for watching.